the journey started when the referendum came out in 2020. And when we saw that cannabis was had a potential to be legal and the vote went through, it immediately triggered it in my head, like, wow, like this is an opportunity. I was a part of the legacy market, and in my former past. In my former past, and I said, you know what, like this is a huge opportunity. You know, we can enter the market here in New Jersey, and you know, being a social equity designation, I said, hey, you know what, this is going to be great. And then I said, you know what, if I'm going to do this industry, one, I understood that the regulations were heavily regulated, and I knew my lane, I knew what I was good at, and I said, you know what, I don't know certain things, and I approached both Joe and Jonah. Because they had talents that I did not have. They had expertise that I did not have, and I knew that I was like, hey, if we're going to do this as a group, one, they're my best friends, they're my partners. I've been at war with Joey on the court. I've been at war with Jonah in different aspects, and you know, it was a great team up, and we just had that synergy.
When you say on the court, what do you mean on the court?
Teaneck High School basketball. When we were playing under Curtis March, he taught us how to be lethal on defense, lethal on offense, and just shut people down and deliver results. What were those results? 2003 state championship, Teaneck High women dropping Trenton. So that was part of it, and all the summer leagues and all the hack and sack tournaments that we were a part of. So that's what I was alluding to. So social equity and how it's going to be involved in the Bergen County market, we see a huge opportunity, not only that I hold the social equity designation, but helping other folks that were impacted by social equity, right? So we have a community engagement plan that we want to execute and work with folks that were impacted by the war on drugs and provide that mentorship. Since we have a strong career backgrounds in different industries, we're able to set them up and posture them to succeed given any industry they want to enter, especially cannabis. Especially we've been through that journey. I believe we all have bits and pieces and gems we can give to that individual to succeed in the industry. And not only that, you know, my partner Jonah here already has a scholarship at Teaneck, so he's already trying to help those folks that are minorities move forward and get their education so they can be successful in their career. And then Joe took the initiative and jumped on the drug abuse board in Teaneck to help protect the kids, because he is a father, Jonah's a father, and I'm an expecting father come March. So I think that was a huge way to give back not only to minorities, but also those folks that were impacted by the war on drugs.
I don't know about at the high school level. Maybe it'll be roped in with like plant medicine studies, something like that. I could definitely see that. I definitely see awareness programs popping up, right? Cannabis, right? It's already available everywhere now, and I think it's already being talked about in the schools. You get programs like DARE that are already doing great work. But I do think as the stigma starts to fade away, people start coming around with cannabis, I think there's going to be a lot more honest conversations about it, especially older generations to younger generations. I think young people, it's not going to be hid from them as much as maybe it once was or it is right now. Or I know when I was growing up, the whole topic of cannabis and my parents, like, it was hidden from me, right? Like, we just didn't talk about it until I got caught, you know? So I definitely think there's going to be more honest conversations. I don't know if there's going to be cannabis classes, maybe in college, but yeah. So yeah, one of the first things we talked about real early on when we started is how are we going to be involved in the community. So I just started with just searching for different ways, like what do we want to spend our time doing? Do we want to work with youth? Do we want to mentor folks impacted by the war on drugs? So I'm looking for that. Came across the Teaneck Municipal Alliance Against Alcoholism and Substance Abuse. Talked to a few people on that advisory board to the council, and I was accepted last year, and what we focus on is programs to prevent substance abuse, plain and simple. Either supporting current initiatives or coming up with new initiatives in town, and a lot of it's focused on the youth. And what I hope to bring to that, being in the cannabis industry, is just a different perspective, right? On that board is policemen, school administrators, residents, people in the council. So it's a unique group, and I just want to bring the cannabis industry perspective, right? We're going to be on the front lines of the industry, so I just want to bring insights and help prevent the abuse of this beautiful plant. So.
And how do you feel being one of the only cannabis people on those boards? Do you ever feel like a stigma is attached to you when you walk in and are dealing with people who are unfamiliar with it?
A little bit.
Do you feel like that's something you have to break through?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, whenever there's a stigma attached to something, you got to come a little bit more correct, right, to break it down. So I remember the first meeting we had on that board, I don't know, I could have been reading it wrong, but as soon as I said, I'm looking to open one of the first dispensaries in Teaneck, there was a little, eyes started squinting, right? So at times it feels like there might be a stigma, but I'm not too worried about it. This is part of being on the frontier or something.
I guess the largest hurdle right now is, real estate. We're working with the town as far as rezoning. That's tough. I mean, fighting through some of the stigmas that, we dealt with that you guys heard about on Wednesday, and making sure the town knows who we are as individuals. And then coming in some of these spaces, kind of being looked at, we're three minorities coming in these spaces where it takes a lot of capital, it takes a lot of business experience, and people assuming you don't have it, or people assuming that you're not already in the community. When I've been successful, I look back to come to my community. So sometimes, when you're in these conversations, or you're being called to these forums, you got residents telling you about who you are, and it's like, well, for me, I gave 2 kids money last year to go to Hampton University. What was your contribution here? Year before that, I gave a young kid that has Asperger's, $1,000 to go to college out of my pocket. So for me, and the kid's gonna be a computer software engineer. Great kid. For me, it's like, you're being looked at as someone that can't do these things, I work for the #1 tooling manufacturer in the world. Top 30 under 30, these things, I've done these things, I've been in these rooms, I've been part of way higher budget conversations. So I think a lot of times it's removing the stigmas and getting down to what are the real conversations. For entrepreneurs entering this space, I would always encourage them to, look into who you're partnering with, look into who your friends are, be willing to listen. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. But I think the biggest part that we've kind of faced is kind of working within this Bergen County and our local community and getting through some of the red tape. But I think it's allowed us to learn some fundamental things that I don't think we learn in our everyday walks of life. Always be up on reading and what's happening in the government, both locally and federally. So.
Yeah, I can definitely touch on that. I think one of the biggest barriers to entry is, one, having the capital and being able to use the capital and understanding what you need to use the capital for. I think a lot of individuals run to go make a logo even before they write a business plan. And I think being very educated on how to write a business plan, how to what an SOP is, and knowing how to execute that, and then being able to standard operating procedures, and being able to speak to it in front of politicians in towns, and being very concise when your explanation. I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of new entrepreneurs need to understand. And the other thing is the barrier of entry is some towns already pick their players. And that's another thing. If you came late to the party, Some municipalities just don't have any more room because they put a cap on licenses, and that goes against the capitalistic nature of the United States. Furthermore, I know they wanted to say social equity was going to be good for New Jersey, but somehow the corporations were able to open up first, and they're opening up fast wherever they want. But then when it comes to social equity individuals like ourselves, the municipalities are moving very slow. And I think that's one of the ways they disenfranchise minorities, black and brown folks, and women in the industry. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed. And I think that's something that needs to be harped on and pushed forward by the League of Municipalities here in New Jersey. It has to be a group effort in order to make that change. And then the last piece to it is outside of the capital and the municipalities, understanding how to navigate the local and state government is not easy. And sometimes folks don't come from the background on how to engage those folks. And sometimes reaching out to your network and just asking questions, calling different dispensaries, cultivators around the country, and just interviewing them and asking them those questions would definitely get them in a better position to say, okay, I'm ready to move forward and execute on my business plan, my SOP, talking to municipalities and putting in the application for the state. So that's what would be my advice towards entrepreneurs trying to get into the industry. I think the most important holistic approach when using cannabis is understanding how it can help you. And it could be a little bit complex because terpenes, there's a lot of them. And then understanding THC levels and how the plant interacts with your C1 and C2 receptors and how it shuts off pain, it shuts off depression, and things like that. But the first thing the individual needs to understand is which terpene does that for me, and how is it going to make me feel, and how much should I consume based on my particular endocannabinoid system. Personally, in my experience, my mother that has multiple sclerosis was diagnosed in 1993. She was immediately put on opioids and other pharmaceutical medicine that was just putting her in a bad place mentally. And then she was putting on a lot of weight. She was getting to a point where she wanted to commit suicide. And for me, that was very tough. And I immediately started searching out other ways to assist her with her living conditions. And we started experimenting with edibles, tinctures, even the old volcano bags to pull in the cannabis so she can smoke it without burning tobacco or anything like that. And that we went that far back, and then we finally got to a point where MCT coconut oil and just cannabis, activating it and then mixing it with the oil and then giving that to her was the cleanest way to do it. And literally MS, she can get locked up with the muscles, but you give her a strong dose of indica, it loosens her up, she's in a happy mood, and she just wants to interact and love her life in the position that she unfortunately is in. And she is the strongest woman I know. She emigrated from Cuba, got diagnosed with MS, dealt with domestic abuse from my father. She is the strongest woman. She raised me from that wheelchair. So, cannabis changed her life around and made this man here. I think when it goes federally legal, I think the biggest corporations are going to be in position to execute on cannabis. When I say that is, if you think about the tobacco industry, they have the land, right? Big Pharma has the money, and they can easily buy people out by just making an offer to them and just taking their companies, especially if they already had a mini franchise in a particular state. But I think the big thing is that if you're going to compete with Big Pharma, you need to be in a position and have locations around the world globally to be able to compete. So for example, if they're looking to grow in the United States where we know costs are high, maybe as a mitigating factor, you go to Colombia, you buy land there, and you grow it for half or maybe a quarter of the price that in the United States market would. And we already see that happening with the Canadian industry. They are opening up in Colombia and sending cannabis products and biomaterials over. And that it's going to expand globally, and we can see Thailand's coming online, Europe countries are coming online. And honestly, when you look at the United States, they're late to the party from a policy standpoint and an educational standpoint and a research standpoint. So we could have been one of the pioneers in the industry, but I think just by the slow movement, the United States is going to end up being second fiddle to a lot of the different countries that are already coming online. And then furthermore, banking is huge. Right now we face 280E. 280E is that accounting rule that doesn't allow us to write off all of our taxes and expenses like a normal business would. So we were forced to be creative and have different strategies around that space. But I think the banking factor will immediately allow us to be in a better position to open up.
We kind of struggle with some of the banking fees and the differences between us banking as a cannabis business versus a regular business. Some of the fees that we're paid for transactions because we're seen as more of a higher risk and then just access to capital in general. So I think I support and love the idea of seeing a bank coming online specifically to deal with this problem. But yeah, community banks are doing a great job in the space now. We have a really solid banking relationship, but the fees are higher than most would have to operate banks. So it makes our effective tax rate, everything, a lot higher. Yeah, legend. My mom, everything still is everything to me. It was important for me to make sure her name stayed alive. My grandfather was actually shot in front of my mother when she was 13 years old, and she moved to Newark, New Jersey, and she became a teacher, fourth grade math teacher, wanted to do more in the community with the struggles that her kids were going throughout her classroom, and she actually became a drug counselor. So I grew up in a house with a drug counselor now, taking on this venture. So she spent 39 years in the Newark public school system. I think moving to Teaneck for us, my brother and I was important. She was very intentional to make sure we had a diverse community. She wanted to make sure we grew up and we had access to things, not because of how she grew up only, but what she's seen in her students' life. So as soon as me and my brother kind of collected ourselves after her passing, we wanted to make sure she has a legacy in a town where she wanted us to be. And we wanted to look at kids affected by cancer in high school, specifically minority kids. Even throughout high school, I dealt with cancer with my mom. And we still, my brother-in-law, she still made sure education was on the forefront. She still made sure, we had certain things within high school. My brother has an MBA. I went to Drew University for economics. She really pushed education. I often quote Malcolm X, education is the passport to the future, and I believe that. So our first year, we gave away 1 scholarship. Last year we gave away 2. This year we signed up for another 2, and I want to embed that in the culture at Deos. I want to help people not only, young people with scholarships, but people that have been adversely affected by, the war on drugs. We want to make sure we're helping on all fronts, whether it's hiring them at the store or some type of re-education or re-entry into the world. I mean, people have been bruised by felony convictions and things that are, had kind of hardened their growth. So through my mom, she always taught us to help other people. Like my house was like that place to come by when you was a kid to play basketball. We had a rim in our backyard, things of that nature. So I want to be that in the community. Community engagement, it was one of the centerpieces that I wanted to illuminate within Deos, and I think we're doing that. But the scholarship is something to start. I don't think we stop there, but it's something really important. And I think that was one of the big points when the young lady brought up during the forum education. It's like, that's something that we stand on. I mean, to even navigate this part, the most important part of it is education. But, one thing I always remember, my mom, she always used to tell people, be blessed, but be a blessing to others. So we're not only trying to learn to be in this space, we're trying to learn to help people. The next 3 guys that look like us, we want to be able to say, hey, we got this template, we have this work, let's do this. Working with companies, with brands that look like us and have the same like models. So I think, everything we touch, we want to be intentional about, are we doing this in a way where we can help someone else? Oh, she would be happy. I mean, had the opportunity to get my mom at MD Anderson, which is the best cancer facility in the country, sometimes the world, arguably. Bought a house in Houston, took her there regularly. Treatment was not working. I mean, my mom had stage 4, like for 10 years, and we were at Fox Chase in Philadelphia. So anywhere my mom needed treatment, she was able to go. And she got to a point where she could not eat. Like, eating was not fun, it was painful. I contacted one of my friends who was really into growing and really into the plant as a medicine. He said, I can send you a bunch of edibles, send me a box full of edibles. And the first time I've actually tried cannabis was with my mom. And
wow.
Yeah, so I was 33 at the time. And that was the first time I ever tried cannabis. I was with my mom. Some of the best moments I remember. The thing about chemo, man, that beats you up. And seeing somebody be like, no, I don't want to go through that. I can't swallow. It's vivid. The person, like his mom's the strongest woman I know. My mother is the strongest woman I've ever known. And cannabis was something, obviously, as a drug counselor, she had some, run-ins with, but it wasn't something that she participated in. My mom didn't really drink, didn't do, my dad, same thing. So getting her to open up to this and how she was talking to her friends, I watched my mom on her 69th birthday finish a whole red velvet cake. So it worked, when they tell you you can't do something, that's who we are as a company too. We know we can get through anything, and the plant was there for me when I needed it. It was there for my mother as well. I just never got into smoking or consuming drugs, so I can't lie, I can't try and say, that was the only thing that worked, and it worked from somebody that was not even really susceptible to that type of teaching. And it was a friend that, I didn't pay a dime for those things. He just knew my mom, loved my mom so much. It was like, yo, try this. My whole freezer was full, my closet was full, and it was something that helped more than MD Anderson, which I love, donate to every year. But they couldn't get it right. We went to neck and throat doctors, we went to stomach specialists, we went to dietitians, we went to nutritionists. I was at MD Anderson 4 to 5 days a week, and cannabis was the thing that worked. So I know we're recreational, and people may look at it for that, but this is something that people should believe in, and it actually gave me a better quality of life those later periods with my mom that I think I would have never had, in a sense of hope that a doctor or clinical medicine was not able to get. Yeah, I think it's important. Just in general, when people die, I think we have this whole thing that people are buried. And you should really have the mindset that people are planted. You know what I'm saying? What fruit or what is going to bear off that plant? And it was a decision we made, and it was a great decision. And, seeing some of these articles, reading these essays with these kids, kids go through a lot in high school, man. There's a lot of pressures, there's a lot of things in society, going on, and they're also dealing with a parent or a loved one affected by cancer. The last thing you want as an obstacle to them is, am I going to have to work this summer? Am I going to have to put cash in my pockets? We want to eliminate that. We want to alleviate that. We want to give them a break too. And I think we're able to do that through my mother's legacy. And we'll do things like that through Dale's.
Everybody, let's clap it up for Miss Jonah Smith.
So my kids are pretty young right now. I've got a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. The way I approach it now is similar to medicine in the medicine cabinet, right? My kids know not to go grab the Tylenol and chug it, even though it tastes like bubble gum, right? Same thing with cannabis. You don't go into my locked stash box, take it out and start playing around with it, right? So that's kind of my approach now. Just kind of treat it like a medicine. And once they start getting older and they start getting more curious, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, just about being honest with them. First off, just talking about it from my perspective, how cannabis is helping me. Why do I use it? Why might some other people use it? Why do I operate a dispensary? Like, just be honest with them, right?
And at what age would you start this honesty?
If they start asking me questions, that might be the trigger. But I think the formative years, like heading into high school, I think are pretty crucial, because that's, kids are starting to develop themselves, and their brains are very fragile at that time. And actually, even though a lot of high school kids, that's when they first start getting into cannabis, it is a vulnerable time for a young person's mind, and you could easily fall into, becoming dependent on it if you start using it too early. So just making sure that message is delivered, and also just talking about forming good habits, not just with cannabis or anything else, like everything in life. Like my whole thing is about balance, right? And having things in your life that keep you headed in the right direction. For me, when I was young, it was sports. Basketball kept me away from, drinking or doing too much, smoking or whatever. So I think just
focus.
Yeah, just putting importance on having something in your life to keep you motivated and keep you following your dreams. Now, it's a unique end-to-end retail experience. So I would say unique to the cannabis industry, because I think right now there's a lot of good models for a seamless retail experience out there already, right? You look at these major companies that are already setting expectations amongst consumers, like Amazon, right? I think the challenge in the cannabis industry is trying to meet those expectations within the limitations that we have, the regulations, the lack of banking, and also the lack of available technology, right? There's a lot of reputable technology companies that just won't touch cannabis because it's still on the controlled substances list. So what we're trying to do is really create an omni-channel experience, right? We want to meet the customer where they are, whether it's on their phone, on their laptop, on their iPad, in store, and have all that just talking to each other, fully integrated. I think there's a lot of cannabis-focused technologies out there that do one thing really well, but if it can't talk to your other system where you're focused on this channel and can't talk to the other system that's focused on another channel, it's going to be chaos and it's not going to work. So I think what we're focused on is really integrating all of our channels and making sure they're easy to use, easy to maintain, and seamless for the customer. And that's really what it's all about. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to put us in a position where we can compete when it does go federally legal. We want to have the infrastructure ready to compete on that level. So that's really what we're trying to do. And as far as educating folks along the way, it's just embedding education into our platforms. I really like the idea of kind of learn while you browse, learn while you shop. So you don't got to search high and low for educational material. It's kind of like if you're browsing this product, you learn all about it right then and there. Hit this button, this little help icon, and learn about the terpenes, what's what with the plant. So really just embedding it in our platforms and our channels and making it easy.
So as a company, I think the vision 6 years from now is to have a good foothold in New Jersey, Connecticut, and in New York. And also, and I was mentioning this during the forum on Wednesday, that our strategy is an ambidexterity strategy. And essentially what that means is we're focusing our resources on the present to execute and be successful, but with an eye to the future to make sure that we avoid inertia risk. So what that means is as we open up our doors and we meet the minimal requirements, for the future, we're looking at solutions such as potentially getting product from Colombia if that comes online, if it's going to be able to go to globalize the business as we understand that the other countries are coming online. Furthermore, from an education perspective, in order to have consumers stay loyal, I believe that starting from a root cause analysis, the history of it, how China had cannabis in their pharmacopoeias in 800 before the Common Era, and how the Scythians were pretty much the first to hotbox in teepees before the Common Era, and then how potentially the oil they were using to anoint folks during the Jesus era was cannabosum in the oil, and that may have been put people in a certain euphoric state to connect with their belief with God and things like that, and also understanding that the Greeks were the first to start documenting. Yeah. So letting them know that how far back cannabis goes and how people use it over thousands of years, and then understanding that the United States had it legal for 200 years, and then seeing why did it become illegal? It was because the black and brown people loved the plant. When Mexicans brought it over from, so when the Mexicans came and settled the United States, they brought over marijuana, and marijuana was the plant they enjoyed to relax and to share a moment with their family members and friends. And then what happened was when alcohol was banned, and then it was brought back, they needed to find a way to keep arresting these folks and getting these folks incarcerated and keep them down. And essentially what they did was they painted this picture that when black and brown people smoke marijuana, they would go and rape white women. And that was completely false. And we all know that. So essentially Reefer Madness was rolled out. And the very first time the regulation came out was, I believe, in the 30s. And then it was just a downhill rolling ball from there until it became completely illegal. So teaching folks that education, that it was a way to put black and brown people and minorities down, is step one. And then step two is understanding who the folks that were pushing that agenda, and try to make that something that was a negative for our people, and getting the social equity back and being able to be business owners today and understanding how it could be effective for people's lives, I think is really important to understand from an education standpoint. So the other day, it was actually fun. I was in the gym and a woman came up to me and said, "Hey, my trainer said you're opening up a dispensary. I'm having a really huge issue with insomnia. And, I'm having trouble sleeping. I'm sorry, I was suffering this from after a divorce. What do you recommend to me?" And this is a Caucasian woman talking to me and asking me for help. And it was pretty interesting for her woman to ask me that question, especially being in Teaneck. It was very, it made me feel good that she trusted me to give that answer. And, understanding what they need it for is huge, and what terpene connects with that, and and how they want to consume it. So she immediately said edibles. She didn't want to smoke. So perfect. So we get you an indica edible to help you sleep and make sure that terpene connects with the pain that you're feeling or the what you're suffering from. I think hearing the customer and understanding them, not just what we're putting on our shelves, our business intelligence and data analytics is going to help us with that. So when they purchase that product, they'll have a way to feedback how that experience went, if it was good, should it have been different, and put a rating on it as well. So that will help us put the product where it needs to be and speak with the customer further to build that profile. So every time they come in, that white glove service can continue.
I think we leverage technology well. I think our closeness as well. I think we're consistently looking for efficiencies, picking the right moments to be present. In the right moments, we can do things virtually. I think that in the future, that may change. But I think for right now, the most important thing is, we were in a Zoom Teams environment and taking what we learned from there and transcending that into the environment when we're doing our work for day-ups, and just pushing each other. I mean, we do a really good job of assessing our schedules and saying, okay, this person has more open space, so this person can take this on. And this person may have more open space, this person can take this on. And knowing when to push and to pull, and when to say, okay, man, you handle things you got going on at home. So I think just keeping the communication open and just keep being very candid, very honest with each other is something that we've really garnished a lot of success, and I think we've been faster knowing that.
Yeah, and I think really quick, just to piggyback on that, the way we communicate, being transparent amongst each other. There's a situation happening, we let each other know, and we have a clean handoff process, and that's something we learned in our careers. If we were going on vacation, or we were having a child or something like that, having a very clean, concise handoff and being very communicative. If there's something going on, just let everyone know, and we execute.
Communication is key.
Yeah.
But I just want to say it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like, I know we're trying to figure it out, but it's not easy when you're balancing the career, trying to start a business like this, being on the frontier or something, having kids, having a wife, being a good friend, being a good neighbor, like all these things, you got to find balance, and we're trying.
Yeah. It's like the way to say it is like a level of discipline and understanding, like, okay, like this individual is going through this moment, I need to step in and help him out, and then say, hey, Jonah, me and you need to tackle this because Joe has his kids, choir or something coming up. So just being understanding and understanding what our necessities are, and pivoting and just being extremely adaptable. I think that's pretty key.
And clear non-negotiables.
Flower.
Edibles.
Flower power.
Depends on the situation. If I need to be productive and thoughtful, I go sativa. If I need to relax after a long day at work, I do indica.
Sativa.
Wow.
Just energy. I like it.
Same, it depends. If I'm up early, I'm trying to do it before my morning jog or getting something done, sativa, relaxing. You already know, indica.